There is a particular kind of confidence that walks into a room before it has earned the right to be there. The kind that assumes the room already belongs to it, that the outcome has already been decided, that the other person sitting at the same table is simply a prop in a story that has already been written with a predetermined ending. It is a confidence that looks, from the outside, like strength, and it is indistinguishable from strength right up until the moment it meets something real. That night in Washington, something real was sitting in the chair next to the podium, with his hands folded and the smallest, most patient smile on his face. And the confidence that walked in first did not walk out the same way it arrived. This is exactly what happened. The National Leadership Forum Hall in Washington, D.C. had the particular energy of a room that understands it is about to witness something, but has not yet determined what kind of something it is going to be. Every seat was filled. The lighting was the bright, unforgiving kind that television venues use, the kind that finds every expression and holds it for the cameras. The air had that specific charge that builds in spaces where two people with significant unfinished business between them are about to share the same stage for the first time. Melania Trump arrived first. Dark dress, perfect posture, the practiced entrance of someone who has understood since long before politics that presence is its own form of communication. She moved through the room with the ease of a woman who has spent years in rooms like this and learned exactly how much each gesture costs and how much it returns. The light wave to the front rows, the confident half smile that managed to be welcoming and exclusive simultaneously. She took her seat and arranged herself with the particular composure of someone who has already decided how the evening is going to go. Barack Obama arrived a few minutes later, moving the way he always moves in public spaces, with the unhurried quality of a man who does not need to announce himself because the room already knows he is there. He settled into his chair with the ease of someone stopping by for a conversation he has been looking forward to. His expression was relaxed. His eyes were not. The host stepped to the podium, adjusted his tie with the slightly self-conscious energy of a man who can feel the room's tension even before anything has been said, and welcomed both guests. He noted that Melania would be delivering the opening address. She gave a small nod, rose from her chair, and began moving toward the podium. Then, before she had fully reached the microphone, she leaned in on the way past and said, in that familiar accent that makes everything sound both elegant and deliberate, that it was important to hear from leaders who actually delivered results, rather than those who made large promises and left the mess behind for everyone else to clean up. She was looking in Obama's direction when she said it. The jab was brief and precisely placed, the kind that works because it is too quick to interrupt, but too clear to ignore. Obama sat with his hands folded and the smallest smile on his face, the expression of a man who has just heard a first move he anticipated and is in no particular hurry to respond to. Melania settled into her address with the confidence of someone who has been building toward this moment and is executing a prepared plan. She moved through the economic material with specific numbers. Inflation squeezing families, groceries up nearly 30% in recent years. Gas prices at levels that made daily life genuinely difficult for working Americans. More than 60% of the country lying awake worrying about bills they were not certain they could pay. She delivered each figure with the precision of someone who has reviewed her notes and knows that specificity creates credibility, and that credibility is the foundation everything else is built on. She did not use his name. She did not need to. The room knew who the failed leadership was. The room knew who the empty promises belonged to. She had calculated correctly that the implication would land harder than the accusation, because an implication forces the listener to complete the thought themselves, and therefore cannot be dismissed as unfair. Every person in that hall assembled the argument without being handed it directly, which made the argument feel like their own conclusion rather than her talking point. Then she came to the part of the speech that changed the temperature of the room in a way no economic statistic could match. Her voice stayed smooth, the words arriving with the same polished delivery as everything before them, but they carried a different kind of weight. She said that they should never be afraid to ask basic questions about who was really qualified to lead. Questions about background, about truth, about whether someone was even born in this country and understood what it truly meant to be American. She let the sentence settle. No name, no direct accusation, just the ghost of an argument that had haunted American political discourse for years, resurrected on a national stage, in the same room as the man it had been built to destroy. The wound was open again. Obama did not react. He sat exactly as he had been sitting since before Melania stood up, hands folded on the table, half smile in place. his eyes steady, carrying the particular quality of someone who has been waiting for a specific thing to arrive and has just watched it arrive exactly where and when he expected it. The stillness coming off him was not passive, it was structural, the kind of calm that is not the absence of response, but the decision to hold the response for the precise moment it will do the most work. Melania finished her address with the composed confidence of someone who believes they have just scored a clean, early knockout. She stepped back from the podium with her chin held high and returned to her seat with the manner of a woman waiting for the applause to confirm what she already knew. The applause came, polite, uncertain, the sound of a crowd that appreciated the execution but could feel something else coming. The host cleared his throat twice, then announced former President Barack Obama. The response from the audience was louder than it had been for Melania, with a quality in it that suggested the crowd was not simply welcoming him, but signaling that they understood what this moment was and wanted to be on record as present for it. People rose in sections. Obama walked to the podium at the same unhurried pace he had used to walk into the room, adjusted the microphone with one hand, and looked out at the audience for a long moment without saying anything. Then he said that was quite a speech. The nervous laughter rippled through the hall immediately. The specific relief of an audience that has been holding its breath and has just been given permission to exhale for a moment before the real conversation begins. He continued at the same measured pace. He said that Mrs. Trump had raised some genuinely important topics: leadership, truth, questions about who really belonged in the national conversation, and that it was interesting how those topics kept coming back, especially when the subject of questioning someone's birthplace entered the room. He said he remembered a movement built on exactly that premise. The birther movement. Years of sustained public argument that he had not been born in America, that his birth certificate was fraudulent, that he did not belong in the office he had been elected to by the American people, not once, but twice. He said that movement had not started by accident. His eyes moved across the room and settled on Melania. He said that perhaps, before questioning someone else's birthplace, it was worth asking whether she was certain she was standing in that room as the wife of the man who had started all of it. The gasp from the audience was immediate and collective. Melania's hands came down hard onto the table in front of her. Her knuckles went white. The smile that had been on her face since she walked into the room froze in place. The expression of someone who has just been shown that the game they thought they were controlling has been running on entirely different rules. Obama did not raise his voice. He simply continued. He said that in 2011, her husband had held a press event in front of cameras to call his birth certificate a fraud and demand proof of his American citizenship. He said that internal Trump Organization documents from that period, which had since become part of the public record, showed staff members being instructed to continue pushing the narrative because it generated media attention and drove political donations. And he said that a former senior campaign aide had already gone on record confirming that Melania had been personally briefed on the strategy and had actively supported maintaining the pressure. The hall erupted in a wave of sound, murmurs and gasps and scattered shouts from every section. Reporters leaned forward. Cameras moved quickly between Obama at the podium and Melania at the table. She stared straight ahead, her jaw tightened to the point of visibility, the composed public face working hard against what was happening behind it. Obama's voice remained completely steady. He said that this had not been about truth or national security. It had been a calculated effort to divide the country and delegitimize his presidency. That was not leadership, he said. That was politics at its worst. Melania cut him off. Her voice came out sharper and faster than her usual delivery, the careful elegance giving way to something rawer underneath. She said he was smearing her family, that he was pretending to dignity while personally attacking her husband and her, that it was disgusting and uncalled for, that he was only doing it because he could not defend his own failed record. A man in the third row stood up. He was wearing a dark suit and had the specific bearing of someone who has made a decision they are not fully comfortable with, but have decided to carry through regardless. He gripped a microphone and said clearly enough for everyone in the hall to hear that he had worked in the East Wing in 2011, that he had been in the room during a private meeting in which Melania personally discussed the birther strategy, that she had spoken about how it could shift attention and energize the base, that he had heard it directly, and it was not a rumor, it was coordinated. The hall's reaction was the kind of chaos that television loves and moderators dread. Cameras swung wildly, phones appeared everywhere, recording. Voices rose in every direction simultaneously. Melania's face moved through a sequence of expressions that the cameras captured in close detail. The initial jolt, the rapid calculation, the attempt to reassemble the composed surface over what was clearly happening beneath it. Obama waited for the noise to reach its peak and begin the natural decline that follows when a crowd realizes the person at the microphone has not finished. Then he reached into his jacket. He produced a printed document and held it at an angle sufficient for the cameras to register it without anyone in the audience being able to read it at that distance. He said it was a 2011 internal memo from the Trump Organization. He said it outlined the media strategy for the birther narrative. He said that at the bottom was Mrs. Trump's signature, approving the distribution of the material. He said it was a matter of public record now. He said she had known exactly what was happening because she had personally authorized it to continue. Melania was on her feet before he finished the sentence. The chair scraped hard against the floor. Her arm extended across the stage with the pointing finger that usually accompanies this specific kind of public breakdown, the moment when prepared composure abandons the person it was protecting and what remains is the unmanaged thing underneath. Her voice cracked on the first word. She said it was all lies, that he was making it up, that he was trying to destroy her. The tears in her eyes were not grief tears. They were fury tears, which are a different thing entirely, the product of a person who has not been beaten but who can see the beating coming and cannot identify the mechanism to stop it. Her voice, which had opened the evening with its practiced, unhurried elegance, had broken somewhere in the middle of its own sentence. Obama did not raise his voice in response. He looked at her with the expression that had been on his face for most of the evening, the one that contained no anger and no triumph and no performance of either, just a steady, patient clarity, and told her there was more. He said that in a memoir written by a former close aide, not yet published at the time, but confirmed through multiple parties, there was a direct quote from a private conversation between Melania and her husband. Donald Trump had told her that using the Obama birth issue was perfect, that it polarized everyone and kept the media chasing shadows while they built their movement. He said she had not disagreed. She had asked how far they should take it. The hall's reaction to this was different from its reactions to the earlier revelations. Those had produced noise. This produced a specific quality of quiet that fell over the room like a sheet, the collective response of an audience that has reached the limit of what it can process in real time and needs a moment to catch up to what it has just heard. Melania found a different line of attack. She said his own daughters had grown up under his failed leadership, that he had dragged the country down, that he was performing the role of a saint while doing exactly what he accused everyone else of doing. It was the particular desperation of an argument that has exhausted its primary ammunition and has moved to secondary stores of uncertain quality. Obama leaned slightly toward the microphone. He said that since they were now discussing family, perhaps they should turn their attention to the comments her husband had made about his own daughter, the ones that had been captured on tape and broadcast to the world, the record that anyone with internet access could locate in 30 seconds. The hall went entirely silent, not the charged silence of anticipation, the breathless silence of a room that has just received something it was not prepared for and does not yet know how to hold. Several audience members rose from their chairs without deciding to stand. Cameras moved to Melania's face and stayed there, capturing the specific expression of a person who has just understood that they have been outmaneuvered, not at one point in the conversation, but at every single point, that the ground they thought they were standing on had been mapped and studied long before they arrived, and that every step they took tonight was anticipated before they took it. Her mouth opened. The words she had deployed with such precision for 40 minutes did not come. She was not done trying. One final attempt, the voice raised again, pointing across the stage, the accent cracking under the pressure it had been bearing all evening. She said he always played the victim, that he acted as though the world was against him while tearing everyone else down, that blame and excuses and division were his real legacy. Obama looked at her, the same calm, the same steadiness, the same expression that had been holding since the beginning of the evening. He said he had never needed to shout. He said the truth did not require volume when the evidence was sufficient to speak for itself. He reached into his jacket one final time. He produced a photograph and held it up. The image appeared simultaneously on the screens at the front of the hall. It had been taken in 2011 at a Trump event. It showed Donald Trump at the podium, publicly questioning the legitimacy of a sitting president's birth certificate. It showed Melania standing beside him. She was smiling. The former campaign staffer who had spoken earlier stood again. He confirmed the photograph was real and unaltered. He said he had been present that day. He said Mrs. Trump had been laughing along with the crowd. The hall processed this, the way audiences process the moment when accumulated evidence reaches critical mass, not with a single loud reaction, but with a rolling wave of sound that built from one end of the room to the other. Reporters standing, phones extended, voices rising and then settling, and then rising again. Melania lowered herself back into her chair. The movement was slow and without the deliberate grace she had used when she rose from it. Her hands found the glass of water in front of her, and the ice clicked against the sides because her fingers were not steady. She stared forward, eyes fixed on a point in the middle distance, the specific look of someone who has been completely, publicly, and irreversibly emptied of the argument they arrived with. The composure that had walked into the hall at the beginning of the evening had not survived the evening. Obama stepped down from the podium with the same unhurried quality that had characterized everything he had done since arriving. He walked past the table and paused for a moment beside Melania. He gave her a small, courteous nod, the gesture of a man who has done what needed to be done and bears no personal satisfaction in it. In a voice pitched low enough that only she could receive it, he said something brief, not a performance of magnanimity, a private sentence, spoken to one person, in a room where 1,000 people were watching and none of them could hear it. Then he continued walking toward the exit. The standing ovation followed him without waiting for a cue. It rose from the audience the way genuine ovations rise, not in response to a signal, but in response to the involuntary recognition that something significant just happened in front of them, and the only available physical response is to stand. The applause rolled through the hall in waves that did not subside quickly, the sound of a room that has watched something it will be describing for years. Obama did not turn back. He did not raise a fist or smile broadly or give the crowd the triumphant moment it was offering him. He acknowledged it with a small nod and kept moving, the same walk he had used to enter the building, steady and unhurried, a man who has nothing left to prove to anyone in that room, because everything that needed to be proven was already on the table. Behind him, in the chair under the bright, unforgiving lights, the First Lady who had opened the evening with her chin high and her smile in place sat with her hands trembling around a water glass, staring at a space where her argument used to be. The night was over. Grace had not won through volume or force or the theatrical moments that cable television packages into 90-second clips. It had won the way it always wins when it is real, by simply being present, being patient, being prepared, and waiting for the room to go quiet enough for the truth to be heard clearly by everyone in it. Some stories end in shouting. This one ended in footsteps on a marble floor, growing quieter until they disappeared entirely, and the silence that followed was the loudest thing the National Leadership Forum Hall had ever heard.